All right, this next video it's 5 days ago. I've wanted to watch this for a while and I never got an opportunity to. It's titled Bringing Players Together in Star Citizen. This is from Loud Guns. This is one of, if not the most important aspects of Star Citizen that I think is what makes the game really special, is when you do things to bring people together. Jumptown, even the exploits have made the game like really exciting because it brings people together. His thumbnail is a little different. It's a bunch of people racing. So this might be around, I don't know, talking about like the Daymar Rally or something like that. But I'm curious what his point of view is going to be here.
I love talking to people from all over the community in SC, and nowhere was this more on show than at this weekend's Bar Citizen in Manchester.
Okay,
Turns out
maybe
that
a
I
Bar
was
Citizen
RPing
take.
as somebody who could still drink, and I'm definitely regretting that decision. But I did have some really good chats there, and it was during one of these with a couple of good-natured piratey types that the subject of the drug wars came up. It got me thinking a lot about dynamic interactions in the PU.
Yep.
And while I love the effort that CIG put into creating content that brings players together, I do find it pretty funny that it's often as the unintended consequences of tweaks, changes, and dare I say it, bugs, that some of the best interactions end up occurring.
And it's like, why? It's so confusing to me why they don't cultivate that enough.
In this vid, I want to run with the topic a little bit and talk about why driving player interactions is important, and throw out a few ideas on how it could be taken forward. If that sounds good to you, then grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, and then let's get into it. First up, I guess let's talk about why this is important. I know that some folks who maybe prefer more of a solo experience might balk a bit at what they perceive as forced player interaction. And let's look the elephant in the room dead in the eyes: forced PvP. So let's start off with a couple of qualifying statements regarding my point of view here. Number one, not all player interactions have to be instances of PvP.
Agreed. 100%.
A medical rescue beacon leads to a player interaction, and if it's done correctly, or as intended, then it's player helps player, not player versus player.
People make fun of like players that go to Jumptown and it becomes a conga line. It is funny, but it is also very special when everyone gets together and like just agreed to do something. And even the Vandal mask thing, everyone gets together. I'm not denying like discords were made out of this and all these people like interacted with each other. There's obviously positive effects to somewhat negative things as well, right? Not everything is black or white.
Number two, me saying that I would love to see more of something is not the same as saying I want there to be none of something else. Of course, some player interactions are the violent kind of interactions. I'm not saying that I want there to be no safe space ever for people who aren't interested in that. Realistically, the game is missing systems right now that will create some of these safe zones. So when people beat their chest and declared, you signed up for PvP the moment you hit play, they're probably right to the extent of right now, but I don't think they're going to be right long term when other systems such as higher security areas, active law enforcement, and maybe harsher prisons than Clasher are actually a thing. Some people just don't like PvP, that's just not how they get their kicks. Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and historically MMORPGs that 100% focus on PvP combat are just not that successful, they tend to stay a bit niche. And finally, number three, to me playing solo doesn't mean playing alone. At the end of the day, the only way to 100% avoid player interactions in a game is to play single player games. I've played a number of online games solo, so I do get the appeal of going where you please and doing what you want. Plus it's just a different type of challenge. Surviving in a harsh world without anyone else to fall back on has its own appeal. But there's got to be a reason you're choosing Star Citizen or any other MMO as opposed
there, like some of the best moments in MMOs I've played is when you were a solo and you were trying to, you ran into a little bit of a wall and you asked for help. There were other people in that zone that you were in. There were other people trying to do the same thing that you were doing. And uh, you kind of like agreed to help each other. I remember leveling in a game where, people leveling in this game was like really, really difficult, and people would AFK level sometimes, and other like people were healing each other and things like that. Yeah, dueling is another thing in other games, like outside of like a city in like New World or something like that. I don't know. There was a lot of really cool interactions that you can get just from the game being multiplayer. Like right now, Star Citizen's interactions are just so, they seem so PvP heavy and PvP focused, and I'm not sure what Star Citizen needs to do to create a more PvE. Let's try to achieve this achievement. I think it takes building a reason to, like, what advantage do you gain from Xenothreat, right? The armor, they've done Xenothreat so many times. I bet many of you don't know that completing Xenothreat would give you like a set of armor, like Xenothreat armor. A lot of people may not know that. I don't even know if they still do it, but they did. But money in Star Citizen doesn't matter, and I think what they need to do is obviously give reason to make money, but I also think they need to add more depth. CDF armor, not Xenothreat armor, excuse me, but more depth to any encounter that you're doing, going down and doing bunkers. Is there something that players actually want to get out of it outside of money? I think it's adding to that, where, maybe you're in the same place as someone else and you look at them and they look at you, and instead of deciding to shoot, you wave or you use your mic and say, "Hey, are you down here for X?" And they say, "Yeah." And then you go, "You want to team up?" And they say, "Yeah." Like we don't have that interaction as much yet. And I think it's because money has no meaning in the game, or none of the actions that you do have enough meaning just yet, right? I think Xenothreat's the closest that we get to that with the box moving, I've noticed. That's where people like really are pretty cool and interact with each other. It's my most random experiences that aren't PvP so far, but yeah.
To one of the many options of single-player RPG that you have. I hate to assume it, but the logical answer is the massively multiplayer part of the acronym. And that by far is one of my favourite things about StarCit. Unlike many other games, even many other MMOs, it's one of the few that take the multiplayer aspect really seriously. Ships that physically require someone else to man the stations, the need to reach out to others when you're downed or stranded, and missions that can only be realistically completed if you've got other people with you.
Yeah, but I think less people use medical beacons than they will in the future, because the armor that they're wearing, yeah, they might want to keep it because it's a pain to, like, gather it up or find it or whatever sometimes, but it's all the same. When it's not all the same, that medical beacon's going to mean so much more, right?
You're relying on glitches and awful AI that will eventually be fixed before the game goes live. So now for the big issue though, and the key reason I think we need to see more and more development to encourage player interactions. Space. To say Star Citizen is big is an understatement, and right now that's with just one system. The jump between the two most distant planets in Stanton, ArcCorp and Microtech, is 59 million kilometers.
It's going to make things worse.
So that's just mostly empty, blank, dead space, right? Okay, so just the planet Hurston is roughly 12.5 million square kilometers, or 4.8 million square miles. For context, the island from Ark Survival is 19 square miles, Red Dead 2's entire map is 29 square miles, Los Santos from GTA 5 is just over 30 square miles, and even Final Fantasy 15 has a total map size of only 750 square miles. The only other games which approach or exceed SC scale are other space titles like No Man's Sky and Elite Dangerous. And while both of those have a multiplayer aspect, they do tend to lead with the solo experience a bit more in my experience. So for Star Citizen, the issue is how to get players who have plenty of space to zoom off into to actually come to the same place at the same time to interact with one another. Now this isn't to say that CIG haven't already made some good progress on driving player interactions. I've already used the example of medical beacons, but I'm happy to bring it up again. They're just a great example of an in-game system that has helped massively with the option to ask for a rescue with a simple push of a button.
Yeah, but I think it needs a lot more.
The dynamic events like Siege of Orison, Xenothreat, Ninetales Lockdown and Jumptown have also helped to drive mass groups of players towards a single location, sometimes to help each other, sometimes to fight each other. And as I mentioned, I don't care all that much for everything turning into PvP. I'm glad that some of the events like Ninetales and Jumptown have an element that pushes aggression between players, while others, Xeno and Siege, don't. It's cool to have different options for different types of players.
Yep.
One thing I would call out at this point is the risk versus reward, that I do think has to govern all aspects of the game. Ninetales Lockdown, for example, has until now not driven a huge amount of players to play the opposing faction.
Yeah.
Historically, the rewards on offer for running medical supplies to the besieged station were far higher than anything on offer for those who might want to don their finest Ninetales armor and assist in maintaining the cordon.
Unless you steal that stuff now. I really am curious what's going to happen with Ninetales Lockdown come PES. Have they done a Ninetales test with PES yet? I'm not sure if they have.
But with physicalized cargo and soft death now a part of life in the verse, I would expect to see far more players gravitating towards holding up the cargo haulers. It's only once we bring in this risk that the excessive cash rewards on offer start to make sense. And in many ways, those rewards are telling you that you're not meant to be going it alone, and you are meant.
I'll still say is that you could talk cash all you want in Star Citizen, but nothing matters until there's gold sinks, there's like actual progression that you want to make, like, you know, maybe losing your components, having to repair them, fuel costs actual money, and ammo or whatever, you know, just, you know, insert thing here that you spend your money on, because we end up just building up an Alpha UEC bank that inflates to the point where there's no point in even trying. And what do you do then? You know, money means less and less the more you play Star Citizen.
To expect maybe a bit of PvP. Please don't tell me that you can't afford to hire escorts when your C2 is making upwards of 800,000 credits a trip. And when it comes to how to improve things further, to start with, I think there's a lot of room to just build on what's already in game. One logical extension I'd really like to see are combat beacons, giving players the ability to send out a distress call if they're waylaid. Part of what I love about the idea of in-game piracy is the potential for encounters that snowball. You know, a few pirates in a Mantis and a couple of combat ships hold up a hauler, making his way between Ariel and Hurston. The trader pushes out a distress call and a group of mercenaries respond, catching the pirates as they try to offload the cargo. The pirates, unwilling to let go of their ill-gotten gains, call in their comrades to fight off the mercs, and so on and so on. It'd be fantastic to catch up afterwards on the story of an entire night of running battles and mass casualties, all over just one caterpillar full of titanium. I think there's also loads of room in-game for further dynamic events covering all types of gameplay. We've had a load of pew-pew events, so how about opening the door to something different? Racing has really been going from strength to strength within the community scene and now with the racing missions. So how about an event that selects a certain track and gives players an hour or two to set their best time?
Oh, I don't know, Loud, if you ever see this reaction to this video, check out the I think it was with the mission team, maybe 2 to 3 months ago, a Star Citizen Live. The next dynamic event is a racing dynamic event. Multiple laps, multiplayer racing is what they had planned at the time. Haven't heard anything about it since, but at the time, that was something they said they were working on. Then
dishes out rewards based on the best times clocked within that time limit. Not only would we get to compete with one another, but these racetracks would also burst into life all of a sudden, with players hopping there to clock their times. Maybe other enterprising people could ply a trade in recovering wrecks off the track with an SRV or offering refueling. Some might even just show up in their 890 to watch and place a cheeky side wager. While the semi-scripted encounters of the dynamic events are great, For me, it's the more fluid moments that have huge value. And the current drug wars triggered by the massive inventories for both buying and selling contraband, and to some extent by the exploits, are a prime example of how moments of imbalance in the economy can drive some players to risk known hotspots and others to come after them.
Yeah,
I highlight the exploits as
what I talked about is the exploit is the reason now, but if you just simply add a reason to use certain materials or mine certain materials or haul them or whatever, right? Essentially, real good reasons for crafting that most players would want to do, you're going to see the exact level of interactions that you're seeing with these weird exploits that happen occasionally. Like this is Jumptown. This is actually Jumptown version 2 with the slam exploits and stuff at like Brio's Breaker Yard and everything. This is exactly what happened last time, and it's way cooler this time with the integration of PES. But if you just create reasons to move this stuff more than making money, you're going to get these interactions like crazy in comparison to what we have now.
As a driving factor here, because
By
interestingly,
the way,
for
Sparky
me at
Leaf,
least,
thank you.
they seem to have blurred the lines a bit on what constitutes piracy. It's interesting to see people who haven't dipped a toe into piratical criminal playing before, viewing those running drugs as fair game. And I actually think the current situation maybe opens up some potential avenues to explore in the game going
Old
forward.
JT.
I obviously want to see the exploits fixed, that's just part of the game's development. But I'd love to see the potentially huge profits running contraband stay, and inventories that don't present too much of a bottleneck for would-be drug runners. But maybe, logically, drug labs should be located in areas not covered by the comrays.
Agreed, 100%. There should be no comrays at drug labs, because then you would know that they exist, right? I'm new to SC. What's PES? Persistent entity streaming. It's essentially the entire game is persistent. Any boxes or whatever that you have in your ship, if you drop them and come back to the same server, they'll be there. It's just persistence. And it basically made it so when hauling cargo, you can actually steal people's cargo.
Maybe there could be a mechanic through scanning the ship and identifying the narcotic cargo, where players hauling drugs could be designated as criminals, allowing others to deal in vigilante justice as opposed to piracy. There could even be the choice for players who wish to remain on the lawful side to turn the contraband into the security services, as opposed to selling it on via the NQA terminals. And for anyone saying,
what about like shutting down the drug lab for a period of time, right? What if you hack the drug lab and shut it down? And literally stop the profits on that server or whatever.
I just want a cargo haul, that's absolutely fine. You could cargo haul titanium or laranite or any of the other legal commodities.
Yeah, and then prices go up.
That way the game's legal system can cover you and you'll be afforded the protection that the system that you're in allows. The additional rewards for running contraband would be there to compensate you for the additional risk that you're taking versus a more legitimate career in trading. And those extra profits also help to pay your cartel members who you'll need to rely on to keep your smuggling operation secure from the increased threat. And I could see this sort of logic extend to other professions as well. For instance, I'm really excited about the salvage missions build for 3.19, where players will be able to buy the locations of wreck sites rather than locating them. But what if certain high-level, highly profitable missions also triggered a counter-mission for other players? Maybe there's been a data leak at the salvage company and some info runner has found out about that wreck too.
Why is Loudgun saying maybe when these are all things that they've like communicated that they're literally doing? I don't remember exactly how they explained it right now, but I don't think it's a counter mission that's going to happen with like the high level ones that bring everyone together, but it's going to be like everyone buys in, it's really valuable, and people are going to fight over it. Salvage mission, like it's happening in 3.19.
Both sides would effectively be opting into the potential encounter. Whoever buys the criminal information knows what they're getting themselves into, but so does the salvage crew taking this particular level
and that's
of
what I
high-risk,
love about
high-reward contract.
With these contracts, hopefully you're getting a situation where you're not getting someone who kills someone else at these locations being called a griefer. I got called a griefer at Jumptown. Like when you go to Jumptown, you're buying into the fact that it's PvP, right? Same should be with the higher end salvage contracts. You're still going to have people that are just generally no offense, stupid, but I think you'll get significantly less of it because there's actually something to fight over. There's actually a reason, right, to fight.
And both sides could subsequently prepare accordingly and have a good chance of a rewarding, in credits for one, in gameplay for both encounter. And similarly with the changes to a mining build in 3.19, maybe we'll find more valuable resources such as quant spawning in much more limited locations, making them a place that an org has to go and work to secure before setting about mining and extracting. Or a solo player maybe buzzes in and tries to fly under the radar. But when you said
Ghost says, I love that, but at the same time, why can't I just have a day where I can salvage without being bothered? There are salvage missions that you make a little bit less or a lot less, but they're just, you get the location yourself, nobody else gets it, you go and salvage. There's different levels of salvage missions coming, so in case you guys aren't aware, you get the option to just not be bothered, and you get the option to be bothered. That's why I like it, because everyone's buying in to be bothered in that situation.
Out to hit up that place, you know you're taking a risk. And you know that there are options for you, like going for somewhat less valuable, more widely spread resources, that are going to be less risky. And I know this might not sound particularly appealing to everyone, and I know I'll probably get a couple of comments about how much I hate solo players. But it really just harkens back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video.
I don't think so.
Not everything in the game has to be for everyone. One of the coolest things about SC is that I can't fully explain to anyone what this game is. It's a space sim, but it's got a bunch of ground vehicles.
I think that's literally the worst thing about the game, is that you can't explain what it is, and that's why it struggles so much to be a successful video game. It's because it's not one yet.
And FPS levels, and racing tracks, and mining, and trading, and so on.
It's too much and nothing all
Adding
at the same
something
time.
Doesn't necessarily mean taking something away. And I do sincerely hope there will be room in the game for folks who want to just keep their heads down and get on with their own gameplay in, for the most part, peace. But by the same token, that's not what a lot of other people want. Some of us want to play with and against other human beings, because for us, these are some of the most interesting, rewarding aspects of an MMO. And for me personally, a big part of it is the cool stories that come out of getting stuck in with other players. The heroic rescue missions, the arms deal gone sour in the middle of Dead Space, or the minor encounters that snowballed into huge engagements. And yes, when people are taking higher levels of risk, they should probably get paid more, because they do have to hire escorts and they do have to organise and prepare more thoroughly, which in itself takes more time. It's only fair that risk should be balanced by reward. Oh my god, the camera shake,
turn it off.
So I hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoy a little bit of variation to content. You know, sometimes I like to make detailed guides, but at other times I enjoy just taking an idea like this that came up during a pub conversation.
Loud Guns channel's great. Let me link you to the video now. I
very much view these as like a starter for 10 just to get a conversation going. So please feel free to join that conversation either by dropping a comment down below or by hopping on over to Discord. The link for that's just in the video description. And part of the reason we've always been happy to welcome anybody regardless of their playstyle into our Discord is because it sparks interesting debates on the nuances of the game. So whatever your style, you are most welcome. You're also more than welcome to hit the subscribe button if you'd like to keep up with more content, or drop a like if you fancy letting the YouTube overlords know I'm doing a good job. I do also have a Patreon, but just by sticking with me to the end here, you're already doing more than enough. So with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
All right, thank you, Loud Guns. Great video, as always. You know, pretty W takes typically from Loud Guns. I think he really gets it, and yeah, good dude, good YouTube channel, and generally really good takes. I just think Star Citizen needs to. It's still in this place where they're going to be putting in everything in a not quite finished state, and we're not going to get all the elements of the game coming together and just becoming great anytime soon. But these little blips of bringing us together, you know, whether it's an exploit or it's a salvage mission, it's pretty exciting, because those are as well for me as it seems like for Loud that it's some of the best moments you can have. It's super awesome.